Hey, good morning, afternoon, or evening, good people, wherever you are, wherever you happen to be, and however we're together. Thank you for being here. I'm Dave, and this is Dave's Head. So, what's in my head? it, it honestly would be criminal, poor choice of words, for me to not lead off with this topic. If you're a child of the 90s, 80s, 90s, loved hip hop, East, West Coast, Biggie, Tupac, true, real hip hop, as you know, some of us gray haired folk these days like to say, then you know who P Diddy is. Um, a video came out in the last few days, clearly, and I mean clearly, showing Sean, Puffy, Puff Daddy, P Diddy, Diddy, and Love. I just learned Love too. I didn't know he changed the name to Love too. But Sean Combs assaulting Cassie Ventura, aka Cassie. You might remember her. She's a singer, actress from P Diddy's label back in the day. They dated for I think 5 years. Um, it was gruesome. As a man, it's disgusting to watch. Um, as just a human being, it's disgusting to watch. And it's one of those things where you look and you don't understand how it can be that someone, because clearly somebody took some money in a hotel and said, you know what, here's a tape. I probably, in all likelihood, saw exactly what happened. But you know what? Let me take this 50K or 100K or XK, whatever it was, and give you the evidence of this crime so that you can't be prosecuted for felony assault, misdemeanor assault, battery, whatever the charges would be. But it's also come out in the last couple of days, um, and I believe this occurred in California. So the statute of limitations in California for 1 year simple assault, or excuse me, for simple assault is 1 year. For felony assault, it's 3 years. This is a situation where I believe this happened over 10 years ago, or about 10 years ago. So Puffy can't be prosecuted for it. That's what statute of limitations are. Now, New York changed the law recently, um, that allowed for the last president to be prosecuted, or brought up on a civil suit. And so it's not above legislation to, in California to say, hey, let's change the statute of limitations on simple assault or felony assault to 15 years. And then you can see things like this coming back, and then P. Diddy, Puffy, Love, whatever the hell his name is, could be prosecuted based on the clear, beyond a shadow of a doubt, evidence of his physical violence towards Cassie. But it's interesting. Statute of limitations is always one of those things to me that boggles me a little bit because it basically says as long as nobody knows for a certain amount of time what you did and you can get through that time without anybody finding out, after that time, you're scot free from any type of liability, any type of accountability, any type of justice. And so that's why some things, shouldn't have statute of limitations. Now, I haven't looked this up. I'm imagining that a statute of limitations does not exist on murder, but it's our government, our legislative government. Who knows if a statute of limitations exists for murder? But for what they probably would classify this as a lower level crime, even though felony assault is not exactly lower level, but lower level crimes they probably put statute of limitations on, I'm guessing, to prevent onslaughts or extra cases or lots of paperwork or just simply doing their job is another way to put it. Bottom line is Puffy can't be prosecuted for this. Now, domestic violence is something I've spoken about before. Um, Something I've had personal experience with. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, the NCADV, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. So during 1 year, that equates to more than 10 million women and men who are physically abused by an intimate partner. 10 million per year. 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence. And this, again, is by an intimate partner. And this includes a range of behaviors from slapping, shoving, pushing. In some cases, the things that happen actually might not even be considered domestic violence. So they're not even tracked and charted. But still, 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men. 1 in 7 women and 1 in 25 men have been injured by an intimate partner. What does all that mean? Why did I provide those stats? A couple reasons. One, domestic violence happens a lot more than I think we even conceive. We talk about it being a problem. We talk about it being something that occurs in society, occurs in relationships by intimate partners. We talk about that all the time. 10 million is not a number that I know I've heard associated with domestic violence, but it should be. 10 million incidents occur every single year. Go look up a random stat about something bad that happens in this country, whether it's shootings, murder, cancer, theft, whatever, and see if you come up with a 10 million incident count. And then look at the things that fall below that and see how much more publicity or newsworthiness they get. My point is, domestic violence should probably be elevated as something that is more of a crisis, right? I maintain the mindset that I've had in my life when it comes to domestic violence through multiple instances I've endured myself. 2 things remain true. I'll put it in an acronym, see if you can figure it out. KYMHTYMS. I'll say it out loud for you, minus the profanity part. Keep your M hands to your M self. Man or woman, doesn't matter. Keep your hands to yourself. Include the profanities in the spaces where it's necessary. The second thing is defend yourself always. I personally, I don't care if it's man or woman. Physical violence is unacceptable. There's an old saying, I'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. It doesn't just apply to the Second Amendment. No one, man or woman, has a right to put their hands on you in a physical manner. Especially the way, whatever his name, P Diddy, Puffy, Love, whatever, especially the way he did. You can disagree, you can argue and fight using a relative term. An argument can be considered a fight without the violence. You can do those things. Those things are natural for a lot of relationships out there, to have arguments, heated arguments even. But to physically assault, batter, felony assault, all the different criminal codes that apply to what he did is disgusting, unacceptable, and I would really feel better about the situation if somehow California decided to pass a law to allow him to be prosecuted. Because what's the lesson here? I mean, that apology that he put on social media, I think it was on Instagram, the apology he put was bad. And I'm not saying bad in quality, I'm saying bad in just, it didn't look genuine. It looked like it was, hey, listen, I got caught. I know all the stuff I said before wasn't true either. Because remember, he was out there telling people a month, 2 months, whatever it was ago, that, hey, none of the stuff that people were saying about me happened. One question I have not had confirmed answered is, where did the tape come from? Rumors that it was found in a raid, but then who leaked it? Not that there's, we got to weigh on the scales the violations here, right? Obviously, leaking evidence to public is probably some sort of crime as well, or at least against department, whoever did the raid policy. Sure. I'm not itching to get that person fired or prosecuted. But I am curious to follow this chain of evidence, right? If it was the raid, or where did it come from? Did the person who sold the tape for $50,000 that's rumored out there, did they make a copy and just decide to release it? I haven't seen confirmation yet. Maybe there's been confirmation out there. I haven't seen it. Bottom line is, keep your hands to yourself. There's no excuse, man or woman, for either to put their hands on anyone. Domestic violence needs to be bubbled up. as a crisis in this country. 10 million incidents of domestic violence a year. Just think about that. Think about how many occur every single day. 20 people per minute. How many minutes are in a day? It's a lot. Next thing that's on my mind is something that's been the source of my comic relief for days now. And that's I don't even call it a beef, because a beef is something that kind of lingers back and forth. Beat down, maybe it might be a better way to put it. First round knockout. There was a beef that happened years ago between not Cameron. Was it Cameron? I can't think of his name, but LL Cool J and this person had a beef, and so he did First Round Knockout. I think was the name of the beef song that he put out there. I can see his face, but I don't think his name is not Cameron. It's something else. But anyway, this was the First Round Knockout, and so it was between the rising star, amazing rep Jasmine Crockett from Texas, Democrat. And as much as I don't want to say her name, I'll say her name for context. MTG, or Marjorie Taylor Greenback. Green. That was a joke. Had explosive encounter during this committee. I believe the committee was about holding the Attorney General in contempt for not showing up to testify. He was served and didn't show up, whatever. That's what the committee was supposed to be about. But MTG kind of went off the rails and asked a question, wanting to know something about all the Democrats, if they supported some judge or did had some relations or connections to some judge. And so Representative Crockett responded, asking a question: do you know where you are, or do you know why we're here? As basically to say this has nothing to do with the reason we're here. Which, by the way, this hearing occurred when it did because half of them went up to New York to stand by the guy who's on trial right now, as opposed to doing their jobs. But so MTG, is always lacking a semblance of decorum, attacked the appearance of Representative Crockett and said that she maybe couldn't read, essentially because of her fake eyelashes. And so several Democrats then made a motion to have her comments stricken from the record. That ultimately failed, I believe, on party lines. Shocking. But after the motion failed, the beatdown, clapback, abuse, not in the form of what we just discussed, but legislatively, publicly, occurred from Rep. Crockett, who, if you know me, I'm a big stickler for Robert's rules. It's come naturally with the different positions I've held and hold, to be aware and know how to use Robert's rules in those type of settings and committees. And so I applaud her for expert use of it. But she utilizes Robert's Rules of Order to point of clarification, to utilize it and ask a question through a point of clarification. And so she calls Marjorie Taylor Greene, essentially, without calling her, a bleach blonde, bad built butch body. And when I say that the memes have overflowed, my use of those memes has overflowed the last few days, and it's something I haven't heard in a long time. MTG looks like what she looks like. Vincent from Beauty and the Beast has been one of those comparisons. That's actually not far off, to tell you the truth. And I used to watch that show growing up. It used to be one of my favorite shows growing up. But it's one thing to be who MTG is. We're kind of used to her at this point. She's the farthest right of the farthest right of the farthest MAGA right people. She is what she is. She grovels for everything, I'm assuming. But it's not very often you see this type of fireworks. Number one, we've kind of lost sight of possible decorum in government at this point. I mean, we could go back to 2008 when President Obama was elected, and just the way obstructionism kind of just went off the scales, and all the different things that the parties have done, not on the same level, but both parties have kind of done it. that just don't benefit us. And I've spoken on this many, many times. We are a broken government. We have been for a while. It's either lie and deceit or it's January 6th. It's just kind of in between at this point. It's one or the other. And the end result is we don't really have a functioning Congress. They pass the things just to keep the government going and honestly keep their paychecks coming. But they don't really do much for people unless you get a majority in Congress and a president of the same party. There's not much getting done. And it's a travesty and it's a shame. We're wasting years and years and years of possible progress we could be making as a nation because people pursue power. That's their whole MO. But anyway, so I felt, 3/4 of Obama's presidency that he should have taken the gloves off. One of the biggest complaints I had about Obama, he constantly tried to do the bipartisan thing despite all the evidence to the contrary that Republicans were going to work with him. And so there's a part of me that's happy that a Rep. Crockett exists. There's a part of me that is happy that there is someone that can go against these vile, decorum-lacking MAGA Republicans. Because I'm not saying that all Republicans are vile, decorum-lacking, but the MAGA ones are. Those MAGA ones who couldn't articulate if you gave them $1 million what actual point of greatness they're trying to get America back to. And so I'm happy to see someone pushing back in a way that is more than justified. I mean, you can only tolerate a bully so much, right? Before you have to defend yourself. What she said to Rep. Crockett was reprehensible, was rude, was disgusting, was lacking decorum, and sadly, was typical MTG stuff. But she got exactly what she deserved. And she continues to get what she deserves. Hopefully, for a little while longer. I say we go past a 15-minute window. The 15 minutes of fame? Let's make this like a 30-minute thing with her. Keep the memes coming. I love it. Adapt to Adopt was created for adoptees to have a safe space to be themselves. They provide recreational support to adopted children and youth through recreational support groups, a mentoring program, sports and community service projects, and more. Tap in on Wednesdays for Adapt to Adopt's What's Up Wednesday video series, an informational check-in update video for their supporters. You can watch it on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. For more information, visit their website at www.adapttoadopt.org. The last thing that's on my mind, sponsored by Adapt to Adopt, is retreats. The definition of a retreat is a quiet and secluded place, I should say, in which one can rest and relax. By the time this episode drops, or actually when it drops, I'll be in the Virgin Islands, attending a retreat for the 2024-2026 Eastern Regional Board of my fraternity. I mentioned on this podcast how I was elected to a regional position, and this is a retreat for the board that I'm sitting on now. It's an opportunity for me also to decompress from what has been a nonstop period since the turn of the year. But it's also an opportunity to discuss plans for the next 2 years, bounce ideas off each other, fellowship as well. And frankly, detach from my professional life, which has been a little bit of the frustrated, stressful range of existence lately. But as this date has approached, week, shorter days, it's got me thinking, should we do an individual or even family retreats to accomplish the same objectives? Should there be a family gathering in the Virgin Islands or a nearby beach, or rent a cabin and spend some time together, collaboratively working as a family to help uplift those who may be a little down, to encourage mentally, to work through things and provide tools that can be used by all family members for different things that are going on in their lives, to come up with objectives for each family member to talk about something that we all can learn from each other. Should that become a thing? More specifically for my family, but also for families in general. Should we all, I mean, we have family reunions, we come together, barbecue, drink, the creepy uncle grabs the wrong cousin or something like that. All those things happen. They do. But to come together with the singular purpose of uplifting the entire family, why isn't that a thing? It should be a thing. And so, one of the men in my fraternity, a past international president who I observe, his family does something like that every year. Very similar idea. They come together, they each do presentations, they talk about things, they leave with goals for the year for individuals. And so I've observed this as he's talked about this numerous times each year that his family has done this. And so I think it's important to reflect, refocus, reform your life objectives every so often. And a personal retreat or a family retreat, I think allows someone to do that or people to do that. And so thinking about retreats, they help, or there's a possibility that they help to refresh your direction. And so think about a retreat as an opportunity to sit in your space, sit by yourself. Me, I'm going to take some time on the beach, kind of just away from, like, I know I'm going there to fellowship and going there to participate in meetings and talk about plans the next 2 years, but I'm going to take actual time for myself as well. I'm actually thinking about golfing the first morning I'm there, which is going to be time by myself. But actual time by myself in a sense, I'm going to walk away from the crowds, sit on the beach, think about things, reflect, deep breath, recharge, take it in, and then continue. But that's my purpose for this long weekend, to build up the bank for the rest of the year. Now, granted, we're going to be in May, end of May. So not exactly halfway through the year. So I got to build up a pretty big bank to get through the rest of the year. But even though I have other time off between now and the end of the year, I still think the way these first 5 months have started, busy, very, very busy, professionally, personally, organizations I'm a part of, all types of things going on, that taking this opportunity and using it not just to get better direction for the position I hold and the board I sit on, but also to refocus, recharge, refuel, all those things. Refocus. I think I said that too. I think it's a great opportunity for that. And I think it'll be an opportunity for me to come back in a better focused headspace. And I keep saying the word focus because I think that's really the main goal for myself, is to kind of refocus or become more finite in the things that I'm kind of focused on, if that makes sense. Because I got a lot of things, I got a spider web of things going on right now. But taking this opportunity to work on a direction for my position, fellowship with the brothers of the board, and refocus, recharge my personal self. Those are the objectives I personally have for this extended weekend. Hopeful that there are no issues with my flights. I say flights because the Virgin Islands, there's very few direct flights from my location, so I have to take a hop. Sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. My going there hop only has, like 40 something minutes between my landing, next one taking off, which I actually like because I'll get there early, but that's a small window. Make sure them tires inflated, make sure them wings are flapped, or tested, make sure everything goes good, because when I land, time to roll off and roll on. But looking forward to it. Looking forward to getting more sun as if I need it. Looking forward to the fellowshipping and looking forward to coming back ready for the rest of the year to knock this thing out of the park. That's what's in my head. So codedkid.com posted an article entitled 5 Ways to Prepare Your Child for Jobs That Don't Exist Yet. It's a nice article. I really, really encourage you to read it, especially if you have someone in high school or even elementary, middle school preparing for tomorrow's jobs. But so they say, and I quote, as technological innovation continues to accelerate at breakneck speed, we are already seeing rapid changes in the job market. Technological disruption has eliminated a number of industries and has created brand new ones overnight with ever increasing rapidity. Now, according to the estimates of futurist and ed tech expert Kathy Davidson, over 65% of children entering elementary school will end up in jobs that don't even exist yet. Think about that. And so they give 5 ways to prepare your child for jobs in an uncertain, highly disruptive future. I'll go through those 5 really quickly. The first one is encourage your child to become a fearless learner. They say the greatest lesson we can teach our children is that learning is a lifetime pursuit. Encouraging them to follow their passions, to build curiosity, to experience creativity, and to find enjoyment and exploration is a great way to start. I'm a big proponent of doing things you enjoy to do. My career over 20 plus years, I enjoy big data. It's just, the science and randomness of it is something that I enjoy. So learning more every single day and becoming passionate about exploring all the ways that data impacts not only myself but the world is a reason I'm still in the industry. Second thing, which I think is arguably probably the most important, but teach leadership skills. They say foster leadership skills as such a decision making, goal setting, confident communication, negotiation, and project planning. Foster leadership skills in those areas. Getting kids to understand their actions are more important than words and to develop an optimistic approach to problem solving increases the likelihood of success. I think leadership is so important. The desire, the will, the ability, the anti shyness, for a lack of a better term, right now, to step up and take leadership positions, especially servant leadership, which is something I'm big on, is a key to the future. So many avenues can open from being assertive in leadership. The third thing, build their skills in teamwork and collaboration. They say in the future, work will become multidisciplinary and will involve new forms of teamwork, including many innovations in digital collaboration. Teamwork based activities allow kids to work with each other in project based settings and help them develop these important skills. Whether it's playing on the playground with your fellow youth or solving a problem in a capstone project, I think it's important to be able to collaborate. You're going to work with people who are going to work well with you, not work well with you, agree with you, not agree with you. And even in those environments we have today in the workforce, some people you can work well with, some people you can't. It's important to build that foundation, at least be able to collaborate with people, regardless of the dynamics. Number four, they say strengthen the core skills of reading, writing, and math. Big on math, of course. Excellent written communication and reading comprehension skills will continue to be critical skills in tomorrow's world. Mathematic proficiency will naturally grow in importance with continuing advances in computer science, big data, and robotics. My industry, right up my alley. I'm big on more so the math side, reading and writing. I read technical books, that's what I do. But the math side is an important skill, whether you're going into technology or not. Lastly, they say teach your child technology skills. Speaking of technology, they say technology is touching nearly every profession on earth, from medicine to manufacturing, from services to construction. Learning the language of code can provide key benefits in understanding machine thinking, system design, process articulation, and data analysis. Here's the key right here. Even if your child ends up in a profession that is not actively involved writing code, understanding a programming language, the logic inherent in computational thinking, and the ways in which technology might be able to impact the working environment will add value to their companies. I go further, say add value to themselves. And hopefully, we can all do the entrepreneurial thing one day and not have to work for anybody else, because we all would love to do that. And so check out the article on codekid.com, 5 ways to prepare your child for a job that doesn't exist yet. Because I think as we've seen education change over the years, I remember not even having an iPad in the classroom. I had a TI-84, if you even know what that is. So we've come so far in technology, and it's only going to get more and more advanced as we go through 6 months and 3 months. Remember when computers used to be stagnant pieces of machinery that didn't go out of style for 2 years? Now we're saying 3 months your computer is already out of date. So just think about all that as you take your child through the journey of education, how they're going to live their life, setting them up for success, and so on and so forth. But I'm excited, and the reason I'm talking about all this is because I want to bring in my guest for this episode, Eugene Williams Jr. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He is a writer, speaker, educator, and former child actor. Going to get into that a little bit. Received a bachelor's in arts in English from Emory University in 91, a master's in education and educational leadership from the University of Mary Washington in 2007. He's authored 6 books, and his books and opinions have been featured in Jet, Black Excellence, The Washington Post, and various national publications. He spent 27 years as a public school educator, served as a teacher in Maryland, Virginia, and the District of Columbia, also known as DC, as well as assistant principal on both the middle and high school levels, and most recently spent 5 years as a high school principal. Lastly, he has been a guest and contributor on NBC, CBS, CNN, BET, and Dave's Head Podcast. Welcome, Eugene. How's it going?
And this is the best guest spot yet. I'm glad to be here, Dave. I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. How you doing? I'm an educator. I'm doing well, Dave. I'm doing well.
Okay, there you go. Got to get the proper grammar.
Yes, yeah. I was an English teacher for many years. My former students that watch this would slap me.
Mm. Before we get into it, I know I want to have you do your own intro, but real quick, as an educator, does poor grammar bother you? Like, does it make you itch?
It made my late father itch. My late father was also an English teacher by trade and a college professor. It made him itch. It doesn't make me itch as much because, as you just spoke in your first part about how things are evolving and changing in education, the language is changing and evolving all the time. So
Mm-hmm.
I watch the nightly news. I watch CNN. I watch Fox. I watch all those things. When I see the grammatical errors that are made on a daily basis and just through me reporting the facts, I'm like, oh, well, this is just par for the course.
Yeah,
So for the older heads, even older than me, they probably itch. I just kind of just, it's the
just let it
cost of
roll.
doing business these days.
Gotcha. So before we get too deep into the Q&A, I gave you an intro, as I always do with my guests. I like to have them introduce themselves to the audience. So take a moment, tell the people who you are, what you do, and what you're about.
All right. My name is Eugene Williams Jr., as was told to you. I'm an author, a speaker, a former educator. Well, still an educator. Once you're an educator, you're always an educator, but a former in building educator of 27 years, 10 years in the classroom as a high school English teacher, and 17 years in building level public school administration. So I've been everything from a teacher to a football coach to a food services director to an assistant principal, all the way through principal. Also, I have created programs in different systems where I've worked to try to promote the enrollment of African American males in AP courses, dual enrollment courses, and advanced courses. That's a very important issue to me because I know that, especially nowadays, when you put people in a position to win, when you put kids in an equal playing field, great things can happen for them no matter what their surroundings or backgrounds happen to be. Right now, I'm just enjoying speaking and talking to people like Dave and having a great time with them and cutting up some issues that are very important to us now. But before I was in education, I was a child actor. I was the first black child in the Jello pudding series. So the very first Jello pudding commercial back in 1975, when you see the little crazy black kid laughing like he's got a chicken with the head cut off next to Bill Cosby, that would be me. I was the first purple grape in the Fruit of the Loom back to school campaign back in the mid 70s. I've done several commercials, several movies. I had the pleasure of being in a movie with the late great Ossie Davis called The Man Who Loved the Stars, which was the life story of Benjamin Banneker, and the pleasure of being in a movie called Tap Dance Kid. I've traveled, done musicals. I was in the touring company of Shenandoah for several years. And so I have a great wife who is a doctorate in health sciences, and she has her own podcast and her own business. And I am very pleased to have raised a 25-year-old daughter who recently graduated from Georgetown University and is currently teaching in Northern Virginia. So there are many more things we can get into, but those are the broad strokes.
Very broad strokes, and that's a hugely successful life circle there that you kind of went through. I'm curious. I'm gonna take a step back for a second and go back to Fruit of the Looms and that whole era because I listen. I'm old enough to remember those commercials. And I'm born in '77, just for those who don't know. So
Oh,
they
you're
were one of
young.
the
You're a youngster. 77.
yeah.
I remember
Some people
77
still
very
say
well.
okay. Yeah, some people still say I'm young. I don't feel so young every day, but most days I do. Um, but talk about the Bill Cosby experience, just really quick. I know we're talking about education, but talk about the Bill
Sure.
Cosby experience as a kid.
That was a wonderful experience. Let me take you back a little bit, first of all, because back in those days, in the early 70s, um, it was really a boom, contrary to popular opinion. They're trying to get more black faces on TV. Now, the roles they were getting, we could debate the quality of the roles, but in terms of the mere numbers of black faces they were trying to get on TV, that was a big thing back then. And so I got into the business when I was about 2.5 years old. Well, I learned about the business when I was about 4 years old, but I started reading at the age of 2.5. And at 4 years old, I was reading my father's tax brochure. My father had a tax consultant that came over to the house and was like, hey, we need my friend's opening an advertising agency here in DC, and he needs little black kids who can read to do commercials. Would your son be interested? And dad asked me, Junior, do you want to do it? And I said, sure. Why not? I have nothing better to do. And so did that. Did my first commercial was a Utz potato chip commercial in Washington, D.C., and that got some big notoriety in the DC media markets. And all of a sudden, people from New York started calling me to be, they wanted me to be, a client of theirs. Agents started calling me. And so my second, actually, my second commercial was a national commercial, was the Jello pudding commercial with Bill Cosby. And it was a fantastic experience for me because I grew up on Electric Company, Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids, picture pages, um, all of that stuff. And so this was the pre-scandal Cosby, of course, many decades earlier. And to sit next to him and the way he related to children and the way he related to us and the patience he showed with us, um, really kind of stuck with me for a very long time. And I think that was one of the other influences, along with my parents, who are both passed on now, who are educators. But those experiences also led me to wanting to be an educator, I think, in the long run down the line.
Yeah, and I'd like to make a note real quick to my audience. If when Mr. Williams mentioned Picture Page, you in your mind didn't start singing the Picture Page song, you're not old enough to listen to this conversation. Just
Yeah,
just want
well,
to put
yeah,
it out there.
you might, but you should remember Fat Albert because that went on reruns for a
Yeah,
long time, and you should remember, the Electric Company because that's went on
yeah,
for a long time too. So, but your Picture
yeah.
Pages
Picture
was
Page. Time
old
to get your
school.
crayons and the pencils. Come on, old school people. I know
Yes,
you
time
got
to
it. Come
watch
on.
Bill Cosby do a Picture Page with you. Yes,
Yes.
indeed.
All right, so let's switch to the Q&A real quick. And so I want to start with elementary school, and I'm going to talk about what parents can do to help their children prepare for elementary school at the younger age, whether it's pre-K, whether it's just reading at home, different things that parents can do. How can parents help their children prepare for elementary school?
Well, it's interesting that you would talk about that. One of the books that you referred to that I'd written was a book called "It's a Reading Thing: Help Your Child Understand." I co-authored it with my father before he passed on. And so one of the things we did was we talked about the things that parents can do in order to influence their young people to read. The first teacher, as we all know, whether we wanted to admit it or not, the first teacher is not the teacher. The first teacher is the parent. And kids will be what they see. If they see parents setting examples for them, they'll follow those examples because at first, those are the only examples they know to follow. So one of the things you want to do is get used to taking your child to the library. Folks, there are still libraries out there. Take them there. Get a book in their hand. Share with them the art of reading. Read to them. Those I can read books. My favorite one when I was a little guy was Where the Wild Things Are. And when you read to those kids and show them the pictures and follow along with them in the words, they start getting to understand that, well, this whole idea of reading and telling a story is interesting to mom and dad. So maybe it's something worth trying and something worth doing, something worth emulating. You also want to make sure that you are setting other examples for them. I talk about a memory I have, well, a memory my father has that he would share with me. My father was the eighth of nine children in Orange, Virginia, growing up in Orange, Virginia in the 1940s and 50s. And he told me that the reason he got into reading the news and being up to date on what's happening in the world was because every morning he saw his father, my grandfather Victor, flipping through the newspaper. He said, I didn't realize until I was grown that uh, daddy couldn't read because he said, I had to reflect on that because I forgot that daddy, this is dad, my father talking to me about his father, had to leave school to help his family at an early age. But he said, but that was the example he set. So getting up in the morning and reading the newspaper was just part of what you did as a man because that's what he saw from his father growing up. And so there's all kinds of ways to set examples. You also want to make sure that you are doing exercises to help your children's vocabulary. Because a lot of times children will be upset about the fact that they can't understand the words, and that turns them off to reading. So you want to build children's vocabulary. You want to get them into lessons where teachers are teaching them about roots and prefixes and suffixes. Get them involved in foreign languages or foreign language instruction at a very early age because the overwhelming number of words we speak in the English language are derived from the Romance languages, the Latin, the French, the Spanish, the Italian. Those are all the types of things that you can do to get the babies at a very young age excited about reading.
Yeah, I got a couple follow ups queued up. The first time I'll start backwards. Actually, I wish I would have got involved in foreign languages at a young age. I didn't get involved until high school with French, and I will say French class. And anybody who knows me, I talk about this all the time. French class is my least important class to me. We had a good time in French class. We didn't learn a lot, but we had a good time. And so when I had an opportunity to go to Germany and France a couple of years ago, I sort of understood what was being said, but I couldn't speak a lick of it, which is disappointing that I took 4 years of French in high school and can't really speak a lick of it today.
You're not the only one that
Um,
went through that. Trust me.
yeah. So I'm thinking about, I mean, obviously Spanish is more dominant, I think, now, language to learn. So I'm actually thinking about picking that up in the next couple of years, just because I think just the nature of the way the world is, it's an important language to pick up. Um, Second thing that popped in my head was, I don't know if you remember, the Choose Your Own Adventure books were my
I
favorite books
do.
growing up as
I
a kid.
do. I do.
Yeah.
I do.
I like them because you're reading. If you want to make this choice, go to page 12. You want to make that choice, go to page 18, and then you just went through a whole story that you created,
Well, that
basically.
teaches you about
Um,
prediction skills, which are very
hmm
important in reading. What's coming next? But I want to also, while you're on the topic, I want to go back to what you said about foreign language, French in particular.
hmm
When I'm working with young people, when I was in the English classroom and they couldn't understand certain words, I would then go to my colleagues in the foreign language department and say, can you make sure that you not only teach them the language, but teach them the English derivatives of the words you're speaking? Because that will help me out. And I would tell my French colleagues, for example, I said, for example, a window is la fenêtre in Spanish in French, okay? And in Spanish, it's fenestra. So if a child sees the word defenestrate and knows that de is a prefix meaning away from, and ate is a suffix meaning the act of doing, and fenestra is the root in the middle meaning window, he can probably put together that when he defenestrated himself, he jumped out of the window. And we got to make these connections. I know it seems very mundane, but I try to tell teachers at all levels, English teachers especially, and foreign language teachers, and math teachers, there is a certain type of vocabulary that's in uh, every subject matter. I mean, if you're in math and you think about acute angles, which are sharp angles, okay, and someone has an acute sickness, a sharpness, or there are ways you can put them together. Acute, obtuse. We could go on forever and ever, but the problem I think a lot of times in education is there's not a lot of cross curricular collaboration in teaching our young people, and that way the kids will see the meaning of every subject, and then French won't be that subject, but really didn't mean much to me. Didn't care about it because you'll know how it ties into the greater the greater community of learning.
yeah, and I definitely appreciate that. And so, when I say it was a least important subject, it was the one where, as youth, we were allowed to kind of be more free. Where
Yeah,
all our other classes were
yeah,
very rigid, very strict. Even the
sure,
teachers were much more strict and rigid in what could actually happen in the class.
sure.
This was a French teacher who sole purpose in the school was to teach foreign language, and then she was gone.
Right,
So there wasn't a lot of investment from
right.
her. Not to fault her at all, but it's just the way the teaching style was and how it differed from all the other classes I had in high school. Last thing we talked about, or you talked about, vocabulary.
Yes,
One of the things, and I understand it now. I didn't understand it then.
yes,
But when I was young, before I could do anything in the summer, my mom would make me read pages in the dictionary before I could go out and play.
yep.
And so, it was one of those things that I just could not stand growing up. But, when she did a pop quiz on a page and I knew the answer, that got me the opportunity to go out and play with my friends. I mean, if you imagine the average page, 50 words on a page, and she's picking a random word, and I got to know the definition before I go out and play. It felt punishing, but as you get older, you're like, man, my vocabulary is way better than it could be because of that. So, to your example of increasing vocabulary, I think that's, although the child may not understand in a moment, it's a great way, I think.
Mom was on point, and I just love that story because I imagine what if that was the modus operandi in every single household. Like,
Mm.
what if that's what we grew up with as a community, as a nation, especially as African Americans. I
Mm-hmm.
think it'll be really helpful in terms of our ability to communicate and pursue a lot of different professions. So, shout out to Mom on that one.
Yeah, yeah. Mom has some good ones. She has some nice disciplined ones too. We won't talk about that today.
Yeah, we
but
I can imagine.
Yeah. We can laugh about it now. Back then, not funny at all.
Yeah, not funny at
Um,
all.
let's talk about mentality in children. And I talked about going through high school. French class was a mentality. It was a way we approach French class versus every other class. But
Mm-hmm.
when you talk about students, black students in particular, what mentality should they have in, or we want them to have in middle school and high school to prepare them for the colleges and the rest of their life? What's the best foundation for a mentality?
Well, I think you addressed some of it early on when you started talking about um, developing a fervor for learning, developing an energy for learning in them at a very early age, emphasizing the fact that learning is lifelong. You know, you'll get your high school diploma, and you'll get your bachelor's, and you'll get your master's, and potentially you might even get your doctorate. And that's not necessarily the goal, but these are opportunities. These are things that are available to you if you want to. And even if you decide to go the route of CTE, or working in the trades, or working with your hands, there's still different skills as you go along in those areas that you have to build upon and take tests and certifications for. So you want to develop that in our children at a very, very early age. And sometimes we have to be careful about how we do that. I know as a classroom teacher, one of the things I would always do at the beginning of the year is tell them, I know how tedious some of these things can be that I'm teaching you. And so whenever I get an opportunity, I'm going to try to make them as fun and accessible as possible. But there may be those days when you just sit, I just talk, you just listen and write down what I'm saying. Because there's certain things you just have to know that we can't play with or take by chance or get too cute or creative with until we know for sure that you have the basic foundations. I think that's very, very important. You talking about math? My goodness, the thing that breaks my heart, or broke my heart when I was in the building, was I would see situations where we'd have kids who were in algebra 1 still counting on their fingers, and it was crazy to me. And part of that was because they had not um, uh, mastered their timetables and their division and their factoring to 12 at an early age, at second or third grade. They had not done that. And so, I try to tell people all the time, you can get as cute as you want to with math facts. But if you don't know that 4 times 6 is 24, you're gonna have no idea what 4x equals 24 means. It's just that simple. Quadratic equations, all of those things. You got to be able to factor, and you got to know your math skills to the letter, and know them, just on sight, on memory. So it's very important to do those types of things. Very important for that.
Yeah. And one of the things I hear some of us in my age bracket talk about all the time is how there's so many things that we learned in school that we don't use, right? Like Pythagorean theorem. When do we use that type of stuff? And so there's this notion that there's a bunch of things we can kind of skip over, right? We can, to your point about foundational stuff, we can kind of skip over that because we don't really use that in life. And I say that because I want to talk about, and I wanted to shift, and you kind of mentioned it, the trades. Home economics and woodshop were part of school when I grew up. We had the home ec class, we had the woodshop, we had gym time, of course. But home economics and woodshop aren't really a part of school anymore. Is that something we should bring back to kind of promote more of the skill, the trades as a career, or should we leave that to those specialized trade schools that are out there?
Well, first of all, it's a cycle that thankfully is coming back around. There was a time when culinary arts and home ec and nursing and barbering and auto
Hmm.
mechanics were all part of the high school experience. And then something happened for a couple of decades there. And of course, the people that suffered the most from that subtraction from the school system were people of color and poor students. Because a lot of those were a lot of the jobs that they were getting. And that was a lot of the way they were able to afford and build a middle class life for themselves. But luckily now, I see an increase, especially in my last 10 or 15 years in education. When I was there, I saw an increase of enrollment in CTE courses at a new emphasis on career and technical education courses, especially in the fields of nursing. We're looking for a lot of nursing students right now. They're looking for a lot of caretakers for older people. That's a big population that's growing. Electric linemen is a big thing right now. You also want to carpenters and electricians and the list goes on. And especially the armed forces is also a part of the CTE curriculum as well. So a lot of those kids go straight from high school ROTC to the service. That's another way, regardless of how you feel about what the service does or doesn't do. It's another way to ensure a career and money and early retirement and a good pension and all those things if those kids decide to pursue it in that way. And so I'm excited, especially in many states, about the fact that it seems as though the CTE emphasis is coming back, and I hope that it continues to do that. My primary concern, though, as an educator, is not to allow our children to pigeonhole themselves. When I was a principal, I always told all my kids, my goal is not to put you on the CTE track or the college track. My goal is to give you options so you're prepared to go to either track, any track you want to go when you leave here. So if you want to be an entrepreneur and be a landscaper or be a caretaker, you can do that. You got the skills to do that. But if you want to go to college or four-year institution and become a doctorate in philosophy, you have the skills to do that too. And so that's the key thing. I want our education system to concentrate a lot more on balance and options. I think that's our best bet. That's my personal opinion on that.
Yeah. So this next question I asked a lot of my when I'm personal finance people who come on, or what are they called? Personal coaches, life coaches. I've
Yes.
asked them this question, but it's different perspective. I want to get now from an educator. Should personal finance be a part of educational curriculum?
Yes. Unequivocally, without doubt. I'm blessed to have spent my last years in building education in the state of Virginia. And in the state of Virginia, economics and personal finance is a class you must take in order to graduate. And I'm so glad about that. I'm so glad kids are learning about how to balance checkbooks, the pitfalls of credit cards at a young age, uh, stocks, bonds, investments. It's so powerful for our young people to learn that before they get out into the real world. Because what I find is a lot of kids are just like, oh, that's just ridiculous. I don't even have that much money. I don't need to do it. It's not a big, it doesn't really affect me. And for those who feel that way, okay. But for those, that small percentage that's like, I see the benefit in this. And when I see them leave and see the type of moves they make in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of finances, and I see how they've gone from A to B and have really improved their situation in life from high school, from when I knew them, now as college graduates and beyond, and parents, I'm just excited about the fact that we offer those classes in Virginia, and I would hope those classes are offered nationwide.
Yeah, it's a strange stat, and I don't remember the numbers because I did a whole thing with the personal finance person a couple episodes ago. But it was something like 50 something percent of people cannot balance a checkbook um, in this country, which is just a staggering figure to think that half the people walking right now are just not optimizing their finances. They're not saving for retirement. They have no emergency fund. They probably have no life insurance. Um, and so, it's one of those things where the cycle continues. I mean, there's
Yeah,
so many instances you see on social media where there's a GoFundMe set up for someone who didn't
yeah,
have life insurance,
yeah.
and it strangleholds the family who's left behind because they've got to come out of pocket,
Right.
whether intentional or accidental. But um, yeah, I think personal finance is something that should be part of the curriculum. It started really early. I mean, let's children understand putting blocks into a mold, and that when they have 5 blocks in it, have one left. Well, they only got one more chance to put one
Right.
in. They understand that concept early on. So why not transition that in early elementary school, middle school, reinforcement, have them open up bank accounts as part of a requirement to graduate or get an A or whatever in the class in 10th grade, that type of stuff. But just thoughts I've had,
No, these are
especially talking to finance people.
no, these are the things they should do. And you know what I can tell you, honestly, what always saddens me sometimes is when you just gave me that fact about the percentage of people that kids that didn't know how to do those things. One of the one of the sad things about education is if you stay away from it long enough and you look at facts, you begin to see a lot of things that hurt you. I'll give you a fact here. Um, it's my understanding that on a nationwide level, 54% of all Americans, regardless of age, race, creed, color, station in life, 54% of all Americans read on the sixth grade level or below. So now let's talk about that in terms of that other stat you gave me about managing finances. So if we have a problem with the basic ability to manage one's own funds in this country, and if we have a problem with the basic ability to read and comprehend in this country, that makes for a populace that can be easily taken advantage of and explains
Yeah.
a lot of the disparity that we see today.
Yeah.
And that's why people, a lot of my educator friends say, I try to stay out of politics. Nah, man, education and politics go hand in hand,
I was
unfortunately.
literally just thinking the politics angle in my
And
head.
if you don't, and
Yeah.
if my a whole thing a friend of mine had, if you don't do politics, politics will do you. So you better
Hmm.
figure it out, what your role and what your plan is with regards to that in the greater society.
Yeah, I say that often that I don't do politics. I do politics as far as worldly in the United States, but in
Right.
organizations, I don't do politics in organizations. But I'm learning that politics comes around whether I want it to or not. I'm learning that a lot more and more as I get older.
Yes.
Um, Shifting a little bit, still in education, let's focus on Black students and HBCUs. Should Black students focus on HBCUs as opposed to PWIs as a vehicle or avenue for their education, or should it just be the best choice possible that's out there?
I think that each child knows what they need the most, and hopefully they have a support system of parents, maybe teachers, maybe counselors, whatever. They can get with them and team up and figure out what is the best placement for them. Um, I have an interesting background with regards to that. My father, over the course of his career, was a Howard University professor of education, and he was the dean of Sojourner Douglas College in Baltimore for many years. And so as a child, I saw the beauty and the benefits of HBCUs, sitting in his classes in the back of the room with my coloring book while he's teaching teachers how to teach. But I attended Emory University undergrad. And so I received a different type of experience there. I think both can be beneficial, but I think if you have to understand as an African American student, there are certain, um, I believe, levels of nurturing and support that you will receive at an HBCU that you might not receive at a PWI, and you might not need that level of support based on what your situation is. It's a very individual decision. Um, I can just say this: um, we as a nation need to do everything we can, everything in our power, to keep HBCUs up, running, and functional. Because as African Americans, we know historically that some of our greatest minds and strongest leaders came from those institutions. One of the things that sometimes troubles me, I don't know if it troubles me, it kind of just makes me say, is we have a lot of our best or what's considered to be a lot of our greatest African American intellectual minds, the Cornell Wests of the world, the Michael Eric Dysons of the world, the Eddie Glauds of the world, oftentimes take their to coin a LeBron James phrase, take their talents to the Ivy Leagues. And I would hope that occasionally we get them some guest professorships at the Howards, at the Gramblings, at the Fisk, at the Jackson States. I think our kids our African American students are already benefiting from the great educations they're getting at the HBCUs, but could only benefit even more if those recognized intellects were there at the schools as well, uh, rubbing elbows with those kids. But no, I'm all for HBCUs, and they need to last forever. And HBCU alums, please, if you're listening, do whatever you can to support them, because I believe in Mississippi, there's a bill that's on the books that might end up um, getting rid of Alcorn State, Jackson State, and one other HBCU. if the money doesn't flip out right. So yeah, we can't have that. So let's just make sure that we do everything we can to support those schools.
Gotcha. No, we have Delaware State University here, HBCU, and of course Lincoln is near, not too far from me. Growing up in PA, so yeah, HBCU is important. I always said that if I went to an HBCU, I'd probably be 20 plus years married with like 4 or 5 children by now. Just a different dynamic than me going to PWI. Some people understand what I'm saying. Some people don't.
I do
But
understand what you're saying, but I can tell you this: I went to a PWI. I've been married 26 years.
mm,
It all depends on. And this is a side note for the young
mm,
African American males at those different campuses. You can find your, and I hate to use this word, but it's just for lack of a better term. You can find your tribe anywhere,
mm,
but are you willing to look? When I was at Emory University, I was blessed enough to be able to continue the legacy of my father and pledge Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. And so I had a lot of friends through that network. And I was a member of the Black Student Alliance and had friends through that network. And so I was able to meet all kinds of people, all kinds of wonderful young ladies. And after I got out of college, I was able to come back to the Maryland area and meet the young woman that has been my wife for the past 26 years. So it's all about how you want to move in where you are.
yeah,
It's possible.
yeah. Proud Phi Beta Sigma member, brother
Okay,
here, by the way.
okay. I see you,
By the
Blue.
way, appreciate you. So last on the Q&A side, and I was curious when I thought of this question. I just kind of wanted to see where this question would go, but I'm gonna phrase it for you this way. So, create for me a black scholar by pouring ingredients into a person. What would those ingredients be? What would be the proportion breakdown? And rank them in order of importance, if you could.
Okay, so when we're talking
I
about
know
a
it's a
black
very
scholar,
convoluted question.
well, yes and no, because I have this actually written down.
Huh.
Because people ask me these questions all the time, and I want to make sure that we get it right. So, all right. When I was in Orange County Public Schools, I helped to create a program called the Academic Scholars Institute. And it was based off of the work of Dr. Gilman Whiting and Dr. Donna Ford of Vanderbilt University. And so, one of the, well, actually, 9 of the things that we would instill in our young African American males and minority, we had Hispanics too that were in the program. It was a summer program we did every year. We did a lot of things in terms of learning and preparation and support and encouragement to get those kids prepared and change of mindset to get those kids prepared to enroll in those advanced classes. But we worked with the 9 constructs. First construct, self-efficacy, learning to do for self. Next construct, future orientation. Always be thinking about what you're going to do in the future to be better, to grow, to attain whatever goal you set for yourself. We talk about the willingness to make sacrifices. If it's a choice between studying for that quiz or hanging out with your boys might have to get left. Things of that nature. Internal locus of control. Do you have enough self-control to see a situation that could be potentially negative and move away from it? And if you don't have it, let's help you develop that. We talk about self-awareness, self-explanatory. We talk about a strong need for achievement. You have to want to achieve. You have to want to have a desire. And all those previous points fall in with that. Academic self-confidence, the belief that you can do anything, that education is not just, or higher level courses, not just, that's for those white kids, Mr. Williams. No, it's for everybody. Let me prepare you and help you and get you in that mindset and in that frame of reference so you can succeed just like everybody else. Racial pride, of course, and masculinity. So those were the concepts that we pushed for our young black males, our young minority males in the Academic Scholars Institute that I helped to create in Orange County Public Schools back in, that's about 10 years ago now. And even though I left, I was so glad to hear it's still going strong. I was asked to help them do a promotional video for it. And I see so many of my students that were in that program when I first got there. Now they're either graduating from college or have already graduated, and they have jobs. And they've gone to places like Harvard, they've gone to places like Longwood, University of Virginia, University of North Carolina. So I'm just very, very proud of them. In fact, it was my dream. I would tell all of my co-coordinators, it was my dream to have uh, a Orange County have its first black male valedictorian come out of our program. Well, when he started the program, he was in, I think he was in middle school. So I left by the time he graduated, but I found out that one of the young people who started in our program and went to Harvard on a wrestling scholarship and academic scholarship, and was a part of our program back in the day, and became Orange County's first black male valedictorian. And so it was just great to see that dream come to fruition. But it's all about um, encouraging our young people and getting back to that point I talked about. Somehow, it's come to our young people's minds, especially as African American males, that academic success is for white folks. I don't know where that idea started. I can imagine where that idea started, actually. I mean, when these kids look around and they see the only millionaires or billionaires they see are in the entertainment industry or in athletics. I can see that. But then I told them, I said, you don't do enough research. There are black billionaires, plenty, and millionaires who are not involved in athletics and sports. And for those that are, I try to point those kids toward the stories. Look at the folks who have left athletics and have expanded their empire. The Magic Johnsons of the world, the Shaquille O'Neals of the world, the Junior Bridgmans of the world. So it's just very important to encourage that and grow that in our young black males.
Yeah, I love the list. I think if I had the number right, it was either number four or number five, which is the strong desire to achieve. If I got that right,
Yes,
um, I associate that. I talk about this all the time because I'm a Capricorn. We're a bit of perfectionist, so I associate that one with my mindset, which is I see something, I see a goal, I see a mark, I want to take it down, however you want to put
yes,
it.
yes.
So I that resonates with me a lot. Having that strong desire really to me supports all those other ones that you mentioned, because if you don't have that strong desire, one of those things can fall off. You're just like, all right, cool. But if you have that strong desire, I want to fix this. I want to build this one back up. So I love the list. Absolutely love the list.
But if I may add, the community has a role in
Mhm.
implementing that desire in that child,
Yeah.
because as a school administrator and as a teacher, what I will always tell my African American parents to do is, yes, number one, pay attention to what classes they're taking, to what their schedule is, to who their teachers are. Get to know their teachers, form relationships with their teachers. Don't wait for the teacher to call you, because usually when the teacher calls you, the grade's already gone. You call every week, you call every 2 weeks, you call, or they have a database where you can type in and log in and check your child's grades. Do that. Well, I don't want to invade little Johnny's privacy. Johnny's breathing your air, eating your food, and living in your house. He ain't got no privacy. Look at it. These are things I would tell African American parents to do, all parents to do. Also, understand that while you must advocate for fair and equal treatment of your student, also realize that most teachers are not targeting your young men because they don't have the time to. We're trying to teach a large number. So there's nothing, there's no nefarious or ill will towards your child. If we call you because Johnny's acting a certain way that's disruptive or particularly detrimental to his academic progress, listen to us because we're trying to help. Now, that's not, I'm not saying that that's every teacher, but that's the overwhelming majority of teachers. But if you're an involved parent, you should be able to distinguish between the two and then move accordingly. So, parents, especially African American parents, please be involved. We are never too busy to do the things that we truly want to do the things that we truly value.
Yeah, so I like to sit on follow up questions, and sometimes my listeners will notice my how I lock in when I'm listening to a guest speak because I'm trying to keep those thoughts in my head for follow ups. But I got two follow up questions, and I'll start with I consider the negative one first, and we'll come to the positive one afterwards. So, teacher salaries,
Yeah,
teacher appreciation,
sure.
to me, I think are just abysmal when it comes to how much teachers are paid, how much they come out their own pocket, the
Right,
effort and time that goes way beyond school hours
right.
to help educate our children. What can we do, whether it's local school boards, local electorate? What can we do to better show teachers appreciation? Not to say they risk their lives like firefighters and police officers, but they influence the
Oh, but
community
they
in ways
do.
just
Oh, but they
like,
do.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Let's
yeah,
talk about that. First of all, number one, people do not realize how teaching has changed. Now, I often get in trouble with my young education colleagues because they say, I'm a, Eugene, you're a dinosaur. You were there back when. I said, listen, I just left the building in 2023. I haven't been away from, I'm not in the ivory tower somewhere, having been away from it. I took a school through COVID. I led a school through COVID. I know what the challenges are. But here's the first thing I'll tell these young teachers out here. It's very important. And I love you, young teachers, but I need you to understand something. The things that you are dealing with are not new. Now we just have social media. We were having these same discussions in faculty rooms in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. We get it. We understand. Okay, let's put that aside. Now, we do need to pay our teachers more, no doubt about it. And that what we have to start doing as a profession is really challenging, once again, back to politics, really challenging our local and federal leaders and ask them, is education really your priority? The amount of money that we spend on other things, I won't get into a whole, you know, discussion. Like we could do that for another 2 hours. Because I'm sure that there's reasons to spend on money I won't be spending on, but um, we could take some of that money from each of those little areas, and we just put that in education. We would be surprised how far it might go. The next thing is, um, when you're funding neighborhoods, fund neighborhoods based on what they need. Let's not talk about fairness. Let's talk about equity. So there might be a small rural neighborhood or small rural district that needs a bigger injection of funds because it's a small, poor district, maybe a food desert, no access to a lot of different things, hospitals, what have you, out in the sticks somewhere. They need a level of help. The same way as the overcrowded, overpopulated, predominantly student of color urban system might need. But what we don't do enough of is looking at each type of system, looking at the demographics and financial revenue base of each type of system, and then funding them accordingly. Maybe uh, the wealthy DC suburbs don't need as much money from federal as a small rural county or the Baltimore area. We have to be just very, very careful about those things. So that's the first thing we need to do. And if teaching is a priority, I hope I'm never going to run for office, but if I would run for office, there would be a national basic teacher income. We would start at a certain level that's livable, that where you can live decently in any area in this country, because think of the things we do for servicemen and firefighters and policemen in terms of discounts on goods. It's easier for them to buy houses the first time they try to buy houses. All of those things. If anybody has been added to the first responder list, it's teachers, because when that shooter comes in the building, or when that whatever comes in the building causing disruption, who's the first people, or who's the first person that has to make sure the kids are out of the hallway, down on the floor, behind the desk with the door locked and all the chairs up against the door? That's that teacher. That teacher is that very first line of defense before the police even get there, before the fire people even get there, before the news crews even get there. It's the police. I mean, it's the teachers and the principals and the nurses and the administrators that are the first responders. So we have to start giving them that same respect on a basic level too. If it can't come from salaries, at least other ways to make their economic situation more feasible and make it worth it to them to dedicate that kind of time to our young people, because that's our biggest resource. If we don't educate our young people, we're in trouble. And what I fear happening is this: I see it happening more and more and more. The elites and the upper middle class and the middle class are really beginning to consider this whole homeschool movement, this micro school movement, these different options. And if they start doing that in large numbers, and the numbers are growing, eventually the only people who'll be left in the public schools are the working class and the working poor. And who's going to advocate for them then? We want to create a system where kids of all stripes can rub elbows with one another and learn from one another and gain empathy for one another. But if we're just continuing to widen that gap between the have and have nots, we're going to have a real problem in this country. And some would say we already do, but it could be even greater.
Yeah. Rich get richer, poor get poorer, but only one side's happy.
Only on one side's happy. And when the poor get poor and get tired of being poor and get desperate enough, then the rich got a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
People got to
Before
survive.
we wrap up this segment, I got two follow ups now. I had one, but you put another one in my head. It's kind of comical, but just growing up in elementary school, why was that Friday pizza so damn good?
First of all,
What is it? What ingredient do they put in this pizza? This sheet pizza that was so good.
let me tell you about that, because I love Friday pizza. I used to
Hmm.
live for Friday pizza. But now, as an older man, as an educated man, as a person who has been a food services director for a public school system, as a person
Hmm.
who has seen the effects of certain foods and chemicals in the way
Hmm.
kids behave, as a person who is married to a doctor of health sciences, who is constantly pulling bad stuff out of my mouth to make sure I'm
Mm.
around for another 30 or 40 years.
You're
Um,
gonna ruin my childhood. Go ahead. I
yeah,
can see
you
it
know,
already. Go ahead.
um, as a son who, when I was little, my mother used to take us to KFC and then pull the skin off the chicken. I'm like,
Hmm.
what?
Hmm.
But anyway, what's happening is, the Friday food, and you're joking about it, but the Friday food was so good because it had some things in it that tasted good to us. And what we haven't begun to realize, whether it be the Friday pizza or the Popeyes chicken sandwich, a lot of that stuff is not natural. A lot of stuff is chemical. A lot of stuff is addictive, and it does things to the brain, especially the sugar stuff, which affects kids' ability to focus, to concentrate, to control themselves in class, to deny impulses. It's a heavy game, man. And so we have to really be careful as a nation about what we feed ourselves intellectually, what we feed ourselves in terms of food, what we feed ourselves in terms of the things that we look at and see. That's a whole other discussion we could have one day about the effects of social media on education, teachers and students. But that's neither here nor there. I'm just saying,
Hmm.
yeah, that Friday pizza was the bomb, and
I don't understand it.
I don't either. But I know there was something in it. I know it because it felt too good when you were eating it. I know something. There was something in that.
I was always hyped to go home on Fridays. I'd be
Yeah.
tired in afternoon class, but I was hyped by the time it was a cycle. By the time I was ready to
Yes.
go home, my poor parents were just like, "We need you to come home tired, and sleepy, something." That pizza
Sometimes
would
you would go to
crash you and
school
bring you
a
right
whole
back up.
week just to be able to get that Friday pizza.
Hmm. Yeah, we were excited for Friday pizza.
I understand.
All right, so last one. You talked about your students who had success stories. You were there in the beginning, you weren't there at the end, but you heard stories about their success. As an educator, whether it's 10, 100 instances, 1,000 instances, every single success story has to be special. Talk
Yeah.
about what it feels like as an educator to see someone go from a bad place, or just see somebody from a young age and grow up and become something special. Talk about the feelings you have inside as an educator to know you were a part of someone's success.
I feel honored to have been a part of it. I feel blessed to have been a part of it. And as a teacher, they teach you oftentimes to not look at to look at students in terms of their growth. So when I see it, sometimes it's not always a fantastic story, but it's a story where it ends up where it was better than it was when I first met him. You know, I saw a student some months ago at a gas station who was a discipline problem when I was his principal, and now to find out that he is a corrections officer, he would have been the last person I would have expected, but he is one and a good one from what I hear. So I have everybody from corrections officers to housewives to doctors to lawyers to real estate agents. I've seen it how I've seen it all happen for these young people, white, black, and of every stripe and of every color, rural and suburban and urban. And I'm just floored by the fact that I was allowed to be a part of that type of development in some small way. And so when I still get invited to weddings 10 years later, or people will talk to me through Facebook about the problems they're having with their kids, Mr. Williams, I know what you didn't tolerate when we were working with you. I can't deal with this teenager I got now. What's your advice for that? That really warms my heart. And so that made up for a lot of the things that I think teachers are suffering with now, in terms of you got to find your why. And I know it's a real corny phrase, because I agree it's a corny phrase, but it's the truth. And sometimes as teachers, you don't find your why until years after you've left. And when you see that kid on the street, that's a positive and functioning human being that drove you crazy, that you almost suspended 5, 10, 15 times. But now that kid is running a business and has a family and is paying a house note and is raising some solid kids, kids that were way more solid than he or she was when they were in school. It's just a pleasure, man. So I really can't put it into words other than it's just an honor. And I would tell any teacher that's where the honor comes from. That's where the good feeling comes from. I understand how difficult it is, but I'll just be very honest with you. We can't lose our passion for helping our kids. We can't, especially the least of these. We have to help our kids because somebody's going to stand in the gap, and if we don't do it, who will? Now I know there's a time limit on everything. For me, it was 27 years. For some people, it's 40 years. However long you can do it and do it effectively and affect somebody's life, do it. And you won't be perfect. You won't be the best necessarily, but every teacher, I promise you, every teacher that's ever taught has at least one student that found value in the experience. Even the worst teachers, I've seen it happen.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta say, I have my favorite teachers. One of my mentors from high school, she passed away unfortunately in '96, day after my birthday last year, so December 29th. Um, but she was my mentor from high school. You know, she saw something in me. She forced me on one side of the fork of the road when I could have went the other way, and I always credited her for this a lot of the success I have in my life. Um, but it's got to be extra warming to dive in a little bit. It's got to be a little extra warming when you see one of your students come back to the school, or you see them on the street, and they go, "Mr. Williams, that thing you told me, man, it resonates now that I'm an adult and I see these things come back full truth. It's got to resonate. It's got to be more rewarding when
It
they kind of
does.
pinpoint something you told them, and they say, you know what, I get it now.
It does. And the longer I live, the more quotes I get back from former students.
Mm.
And some of the things that they say I said to them that inspired them, I'm like, I kept my job and told you that. Because I was always very
Yeah.
honest with them. I was always very
Hmm.
real with them in a professional way, of course. I mean, I don't have any hair to unbraid, so but I get that. But no,
Yeah.
it's
Tough
just
topic right now. Yeah.
yeah, I know. It's just well, not that's not top for me. I could tell you to be going about that too. But
Yeah.
it's just a pleasure for me to get that from them and to hear my quotes, things that came out of my mouth, that I remember now. And then to think of myself, what mind state was I in when I told that child that? What was going on in my
Hmm.
life when I told that child that? That's also an interesting thing to reflect on as well. But yeah, man,
Yeah.
it's been a blessing in a variety of ways.
Simple solutions for complex problems. For over 15 years, SRE Solutions has provided today's solution to prevent tomorrow's problem. SRE Solutions will provide you effective, efficient, robust, and reliable business intelligence, application and website design, wired and wireless network installation, PC support services, and much, much more. For more information, visit their website at www.sresolutions.org. That's www.sresolutions.org. So that's all for the Q&A segment. Now for my favorite segment, my guest called First Thoughts, which is sponsored by SRE Solutions. For those who are tuning in for the first time or not familiar with First Thoughts, as I always say, shame on you, but I'm happy you're here. First Thoughts is an opportunity I have with my guests to offer them a word or a phrase to get their first thought. Obviously, they're not privy to these because that would defeat the purpose of First Thoughts. That's why.
What is this, a lightning round or something, man? What are we doing right
Yeah,
now?
pretty much a lightning round. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Mr. Williams, you ready for some First Thoughts?
I don't know. Am I?
We'll find out. We'll find
Go
out.
ahead. Go ahead.
Always, I try to start with a softball one here, and so
Okay.
it's something I actually saw from your profile. I'm curious to see what your first thought on is.
Okay.
An attitude of gratitude. What's your first thought?
Can't live without it. Life is too hard.
Okay.
You got two choices in this life: either give up or go on. If God decided to wake you up this morning, you better remember there's a whole bunch of people that didn't wake up this morning, and that in and of itself is source for hallelujah.
Absolutely. All right. Next first thought. Summer school. What's your first thought?
It needs to be more rigorous nationwide. In too many instances, I've seen summer school just kind of be a formulaic thing you just have to go through to say you did it so you can move on to the next grade level. And that's not helping our kids. I think we need to have concentrate on a rigorous summer school program in our public schools. And if the kids don't want to attend or can't attend it, just let them know. Okay, well, you'll be back in the grade you were in last year then. Oh, well. Or you'll take that class again until you pass it. But there used to be a time when we would, it's called social promotion, and I'm pretty sure it still happens in some instances. But it was a good idea in thought and in heart when it first came about. But it might be the educational death of us down the line. We got to stop doing
that. Okay. I was going to ask this, but you touched on it a couple minutes ago. So now I want to see what your thoughts on it are. And so this is in the context of a teacher having their hair braided. But if I say teacher-student friendships, what's your first thought?
Nope. Relationships, yes. Friendships, no. All my students knew they could confide in me. They trusted me to be me at all times. And to tell them if I believed in them, to encourage them. Would they ever say, Mr. Williams is my buddy? Nah. Because there were too many times when I would have to, in that same breath, I love you, but not got to check you. Because I understand why you behave, especially as a principal. I understand why you behave this way, Susie or Johnny. I get it. I understand what motivated that. And I understand what brought that on. But now you must realize you can't do that in this setting. And so there are consequences to that. So I would say, form a relationship, friendship, same as parents. My daughter and I just recently got to be, I would say, friends. Now that she's 25, but we were a little friend when she was coming up, Now that I know now that I see that she's matured and is making some great life decisions and doesn't really need me in that element anymore, now we can hang out. Now we can joke. Now we can play. Now we can, but no. Relationships, yes.
So not 25, not 18, or not 21 or 18, 25.
No, yeah. As she got older, as an adult. But I'm talking about in those formative years, birth to my high school graduation, we ain't buddies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. No, I 100% agree with that. A lot of parents out there. I'm not gonna say a lot. I'm not gonna generalize all parents, but
like I said,
too many parents.
Relationships, not friendships.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a video of a principal who has a handshake with every single student, and he greets them in the morning. It's such an amazing video. First of all, it's I don't know, 75, 100 students 7, 8 year old, whatever. They're pretty young. To me, to memorize the handshakes of 75 to 100 students, to greet them every single day is
Right.
amazing in its own right. But to your point, the relationship that's created from that is something that I think is a great example of what you're talking about. But last first thought, and I say this one for last because I figured this might be the most involved. CRT, been a hot topic out there. What's your first thought?
Much ado about nothing.
Mm.
Um, I was once asked by a parent, "Are you teaching CRT in your school?" I said, "No, I'm teaching history,
Mm.
but I'm teaching history warts and all."
Mm.
Okay, we there's no our history is what it is. Now, if you decide that the history is too much for you, I can't help you because I didn't create the history. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't do it. Okay, I just live as a person who was part of a group that had to react to it. Um, but it is what it is. Were people of color treated differently from white folks throughout the majority of this nation's existence? Yes. But why is that why is that even a for me a discussion? Why is that controversial to talk about? Slavery happened. Jim Crow happened. Redlining happened. Tulsa happened. Lake Lanier happened. These are not debates. So, and I don't think that we have to worry about white kids feeling guilty about what happened. It's history, and I don't want anybody to feel guilty. Whether you feel guilty or not, that is guilt is your choice.
Mm-hmm.
You can decide to feel guilty or not. That's not what it's about. But I am there as a teacher to educate about the good, bad, and the ugly parts of our nation's history. If I'm a history teacher, my favorite story about that, my daughter was in an AP history class in high school. And she told me a story about what her teacher said to her. They're talking about the 1950s. 1950s in America were the happy days. Economy was booming. Everybody was having a great time. She sheepishly raised her hand and said, "Excuse me, Mr. So-and-so. Everybody was having a great time in the 50s? Everybody? You sure about that?"
Mm.
And that teacher then came back to me because I was the assistant principal at the school she attended and said, "Mr. Williams, I had not even thought about that." I said, "Yeah, I understand. And you're my history teacher, and you haven't
Mm.
thought about that. You didn't
Mm.
consider that. We all got some
Wow.
things to do and learn." So, no, the people who cry about CRT are people who just want to romanticize America. And there's enough great things about America without having to lie about the bad things about America.
Mm. Very valid point. Yeah, the whole discussion with CRT just to me, I bring it down to the foundation. What's the facts of it? I'm a very black and white, 1-0, on off type of person. There's not a lot of gray area in my mindset. So is it factual history or is it not? And if it bothers you to talk about factual history, then that's something you need to work out.
Yeah,
But
if
to
facts
have these
bother you, I can't help
conversations,
you. Yeah, you're
yeah,
right.
yeah, it just it it just gets silly to me sometimes. Let's keep it on the factual discussion of what it's really about. If it's that it bothers you, okay, we can do something about that. But if
Right.
it's that the history isn't true, that's a different story, which we know it is true. So you know it's one of those things.
It is.
But it's funny how the topic of CRT has kind of died down in recent months as well. It was such a big deal. It was the country's dying over it, and then suddenly it just kind of disappears. We don't
Well,
talk about it anymore.
it's,
But
it's, it's not interesting to me because you have to watch these trends. You have to watch.
mm-hmm,
So CRT is dying, right? And DEI is decreasing as well.
mm-hmm, yeah,
And so I don't think that's an accident.
yeah,
Affirmative action achievements are being pulled back as well. I don't think that's an accident. So, you know, as we one thing that is just my personal opinion about America's history, we've seen it time and time again. Whenever people of color are beating the odds and um, winning in ways that we're not used to seeing them win collectively, there usually is some sort of backlash.
Hmm.
You know, you go from our president before the last one, go from Obama to what we've been dealing with the past 8 years or so. Backlash, black success backlash, Tulsa, Oklahoma backlash. Like I said, Lake Lanier was once a town, an all black town in Georgia, doing very well economically. It was flooded, became a lake, not an accident. Central Park in New York City used to be all black neighborhood, it'll be all black village, all black town. Now it's a park paved over it. Is that a mistake? There are too many different examples of it. And that's not CRT.
Yeah.
That's what happened. If you can't do what happened, I can't help you.
Yeah. By the way, I don't say the previous president's name either. By the way, I try not to anyway.
Yeah.
But Brother Williams, I appreciate you stepping to Dave's head, dropping some amazing commentary and thoughts, and we got to do a part two at some point.
I
But before
appreciate you, man. This is a great show, and you're a fantastic host, and I just love the whole vibe of this. Yes, indeed.
absolutely appreciate that. Before I let you go, though, as always with my guests, I'd like to offer the opportunity. If there's anything you want to promote or talk about, feel free to do so.
My website is www.eugenewilliamsjr.com. And it talks about all the things that we talked about today on this show, and my books, and how to contact me for speaking engagements and all of those things. So I'm teachers, principals, corporations. I'm out here ready to talk to you. I'm ready to be listened to. Also, um, for Instagram at EUGWILLJR, and for TikTok, ewill521. So those are all the ways that you can get in touch or see me or find out what I'm trying to do or what I'm doing.
All right. Well, thanks again for stepping to Dave's head. And as I've been saying this season, have a great 2024. My absolute favorite segment of my podcast is my GRIN, which stands for Great Reason to Be in Love with Now. Apex Systems published an article, How Great Leaders Survive and Thrive Under Pressure. Now, this is by University of Georgia professor Dr. Paul Shemp. Hope I got that right. A performance expert who helps organizations create and lead efficient teams. Dr. Shemp provided 4 major strategies to help ease pressure and enhance performance in the face of stress on working professionals. I think one of the things that this episode has provided me an opportunity, especially talking with an educator, is looking at the difficulties. And we talked a little bit about difficulties that educators face, but have faced for many, many years. And so as we go through life, whether you're an educator or not, we're going to have different stresses in our lives, and how we handle those. Talking about starting at a young age and prepping yourself through education and the importance of it will prepare you to handle different things that you go through. Stress is one of those things we need to be educated on as well. How do we handle stress? How do we use stress to our benefit? And how do we grow from the stress we encounter? And so they talk about 4 major strategies to help ease pressure and enhance performance in the face of stress on working professionals. The first one they say is prepare. Sounds like the start to every single thing we need to do better at or learn to work through. They say proper preparation is not about scripting an unpredictable future, but rather being prepared for whatever is to come. They talk about team and organizational preparation, preparing contingency plans, completing administrative tasks that can distract and add stress ahead of time, developing healthy lifestyles, or lifestyle habits, I should say, to help with stress management, such as getting enough exercise and sleep. If you see me rolling my eyes, it's because me and sleep have a up and down, up and down history with each other. But proper preparation in those areas, organizational, contingency plans, getting rid of small mundane tasks that could cloud your progress or retard your progress in many ways. Healthy lifestyle habits. You have to be there for yourself, right? And we're going to talk about that in a second. The second thing they talk about is controlling the controllable. They say average leaders stress over the challenges they face, while great leaders devote the energy to developing solutions and strategies. Reduce stress by detaching from the outcome, acting on matters that you're in your control, and seeking to improve and eliminate controllable stressors whenever possible. You only can control what you can control, right? You can't control things that you have no power over, no influence over, you're not even aware of. You can't control those things. So why even stress over? Why add the stress of something you hope to influence when you can control and influence things and have control over what actually happens with those? Prepare for those. Work around those. Things you can't control, things you can't even see, while they may impact you, you can't control them. So all you can control is how you respond to it. The third thing they say is immerse in the process. Focus on the process that will determine the outcome you desire rather than becoming preoccupied with the outcome itself. Say that again. Focus on the process that will determine the outcome you desire rather than becoming preoccupied with the outcome itself. What does that mean? Execute the plan and take action on the controllable things. Here we go, controllable again. That will achieve the preferred results. Realizing any goal requires diligently following a well-conceived path. That path is your plan. You're not worrying about the goal line. You're worrying about the race you got to run. Right? When I do my workouts, I don't sit there and say, I'm worrying about finishing that last set when I'm on the first one. I think about breathing properly, doing full reps, full extensions on the exercise I'm working on in a moment. Not the 6 that come after it, and definitely not the 7th one to finish. How will I get through my workouts properly? How will I actually learn to be disciplined in my workouts if I'm thinking about the last exercise on the first one? Same thing with this. The process is what's going to get you success. You can't think and worry and obsess about the goal of the process. You have to think about executing the process and all the steps you've hopefully properly laid out. Love that one. The last one. Just talking about this in my opening. Release and recharge. If you as a leader can't function, your team can't function. Say that again. If you as a leader can't function, your team can't function. The best leaders and coaches recognize that they must take care of themselves first to be successful for their team. They say gaining and maintaining emotional control by taking a step back from emotionally charging situations. Take a pause. Don't stress out. Don't lose who you are in the moment because of some stressor that's out there, whether it be a person or an event. Prioritize downtime activities like exercise, reading, and regular breaks. Emphasis on exercise. Exercise is a great stress releaser, great recharger. You find yourself stressed in the afternoon, take a break, go for a walk. Now that it's warm, I'm doing that a little more. Take a break, get your workout in, a quick workout, and do a quick ab exercise or quick jumping jacks, something to kind of get you refocused on something other than that. And you come back and you might be a little winded at first, but then your body picks up the juice momentarily. Socializing and having fun. Sometimes that release you need is just going out for the night, going out to a happy hour, going to dinner with friends, reconnecting with someone or a family member, taking that break. In that moment, not thinking about the work or the job or the process or the plan or the difficulties or the stressors or anything like that. Being in that moment, enjoying the person or people you're with, and just releasing yourself from the stress. Come back recharged from that. The last thing they say is utilizing resources to improve health and coping skills. What are those resources? Could be a counselor. Could be someone you confide in like a friend. Could be an app on your phone. Could be your favorite Netflix movie or series. Could be something like sitting there listening to music. Could be a soundtrack or a playlist. Could be so many things. Could be a bike or rollerblades. So many things that you could find utilized as a tool, either a person or an object or something professional or a resource to help you release and recharge. So again, as we go through stresses in life, how we handle those stresses, how we elevate, how we ease the pressure that we face constantly every single day in various levels, how we handle even the small pressure gives us the tool set and the ability to handle the big pressure. Again, Apex Systems published this article, How Great Leaders Survive and Thrive Under Pressure. There's more than what I covered. Take a read. The main things are prepare, control the controllable, immerse in the process, and release and recharge. Now, if I had to rank those four in order, they say a Boy Scout is always prepared. I was a Boy Scout back in the day, little tyke. I'd say preparing is probably number one. I think immersing yourself in the process is number two, because off that preparation, then you look at, I prepared, I planned, I've got to trust that plan, right? Part of that immersion is understanding that you can only control what you can control. And I think if you do those three things, properly prepare, trust the process, or immerse yourself in the process, have the mentality that you can control only what you can control, it'll make releasing and recharging easier, whether it's big stress or little stress. It'll make it easier because you prepare, you immerse yourself, and you understand what you can and can't do. And so when you get to a point where maybe all those things are done right and you still face a stressor, you'll be able to release because you trusted the plan, you trusted the process, you trust your ability to do what you can do, knowing that you can't do what you can't do. Release, recharge, repeat, and then you should be good to go. So those are just some tips to ease some pressure. Check out the article again on Apex Systems website, How Great Leaders Survive and Thrive Under Pressure. I want to thank Eugene Williams Jr. for an amazing conversation. We even talked about part two later this year. So if you like Eugene, if you like that interview, you like the things we talked about, drop a comment, send some feedback. All of it's welcome and I think necessary. Check out his website, www.eugenewilliamsjr.com. You can find him on Instagram at EuWillJr. Very, just a horrible way to put that. It's EUGWILLJR. I don't know how to enunciate that. Euge Will Jr. There you go. EUGWILLJR on Instagram and TikTok, ewill521. See how ewill is a lot easier to enunciate and it makes sense? But ewill521 on TikTok. Support our sponsors, SRE Solutions, for all your PC support, service, antivirus, website design, network cable run needs. Check them out at www.sresolutions.org. And Adapt to Adopt, for all your support of adoptions and adoptees. Check them out at www.adapttoadopt.org. And if you're interested in sponsoring Dave's Head in 2024, reach out to me on any of my social media and we can make it happen. Lastly, this season, I told you I was going to leave you with a quote to cap each episode. This time, we're going to talk about, or continue talking about, I should say, education. It's a quote by G.K. Chesterton. G.K. Chesterton. It goes a little something like this. Education is simply the soul of a society as it passes from one generation to another. As some plot to erase factual history, and Eugene Williams Jr. and myself, we talked about this during his interview, rewrite the definition of good and evil, and assert control of the narrative, we keep the soul of our society strong, factual, and resilient by investing and committing to educating ourselves in areas of interest and areas of societal need. We are the conduits in which factual history travels forward, and we have a great and rewarding job of seeing it through. So thank you for that quote, G.K. Chesterton. If you like this podcast, follow, like, subscribe. If somebody sent it to you, your support is always, always welcome. So retreats, scholars, and easing pressure. All great reasons to be in love with now. That's all for this episode of Dave's Head. New episodes released on the second and fourth Friday of the month. For all things Dave's Head, check out our website at daveshead.card.co. Subscribe to watch new episodes on YouTube or Spotify video, or to listen via your preferred podcast player, go to anchor.fm/Dave's Head Pod. Thank you for watching or listening. As always, enjoy life, because life should be fun. Take care.